Hello families, my name is Steve Ellis, Superintendent of Nash County Public Schools. Last year the pandemic brought many challenges to our district. I want to thank you for your support as we navigated through these new waters. Today we will be answering the questions and concerns you might be having concerning Plan C. We will review the plan and then answer questions. Thank you again for your participation and your dedication to the students of Nash County Public Schools.
Good morning. My name is Chris Catalano. I am the Executive Director of Communication, Planning, and Engagement for Nash County Public Schools. I'd like to say thank you to everyone for joining us today for a virtual community information session. We will start this session in a this session in a face-to-face format in January of last year as a formal way to tell the district's story. Community information sessions are open to all stakeholder groups, and the purpose is to share district information with families of Nash County Public Schools. That purpose is even more important in today's COVID-19 world. As Dr. Ellis mentioned, we know you have many questions about reopening schools for the 2020-21 school year, and we hope that today many of those questions will be answered during this information session. We will begin with a presentation by district staff and then move into a question and answer session. The question and answer portion will begin with some pre-submitted questions that were emailed prior to today's meeting. Following those questions and answers, Mr. Tremaine McQueen and I will serve as moderators, selecting questions from the YouTube live chat to read to the group and answer. We will end our session today at 11:30. So our hope is that most of your questions will get answered. However, if there are any remaining questions in the chat or emailed, we will archive these questions and answers to them will be posted on our Nash County Public Schools website. The presentation we will be using for today's discussions have been posted in the chat for those of you who would like to follow along with us. Thank you for joining us today. We're ready to get started. So we have created a comprehensive communication plan as we move into the 2020 school year, beginning with community information sessions. Today is the first of many that we plan to host throughout the course of the entire school year, actually. We have established and will continue our Parent Advisory Council, and have added to the Parent Advisory Council a teacher council, an administrator council, a community advisory council, and have plans to add a student advisory council as well. We have sent out numerous online surveys for feedback and information. Your principals will be sharing additional surveys as we move into this week and they gather information about opening schools for students. We also, beginning this week, will post a series of videos about various topics around reopening, from student and staff safety, remote learning expectations, learning management platforms, and many, many more. So as mentioned, we will spend the first portion of our meeting with this presentation and then have a moderated question and answer session after that.
So at this time, what I will do is briefly go over the plan. Just wanted to stress that our main objective is to open schools with students. However, we must consider the safety of our students and staff as we move forward. In a quick review, the governor's recommendations gave us 3 plans. One would be Plan A with minimal social distancing. All students and staff are on campus, but there is still a virtual academy option. Plan B is moderate social distancing, limit density of students. Staff and students are on campus, but in I guess it would be a half model. Also, the virtual academy would still be an option. Plan C would be the remote learning, all staff on campus and all students are remote learning, but still having a virtual academy option. So what we have chosen is that we are recommending a Plan C, remote learning. All staff are on campus and all students are remote learning, but there's still a virtual academy option, which we will talk about today. One thing I do want to stress is that we have a plan for a transition to Plan B. It'll be the blended model, but we will be starting the Plan B as soon as it is practical. We would like to attempt to phase in our most vulnerable populations for face-to-face instruction. These would be self-contained EC and our pre-kindergarten students. At the earliest, this would be September 8th. Many of the factors we are considering when we're moving to a blended model is the metrics. This will be a discussion with the Nash County Health Department and also the State Scientific Advisory Board. Staffing, what are the concerns from teachers, the comfortability, and also is their attendance. Student safety, we answer questions about masks, sanitizers, equipment. Transportation, right now we can only transport about 23 students per load. That is something we have to consider. But under the blended model, it would be a Plan B, which means you would have some kids attending on certain days with only half in attendance.
All right. Thank you for that, Dr. Ellis. We all can agree that technology is a vital part of remote learning. To make remote learning a success, we feel that all students should have a device. So last year, we were already a one-to-one district in grades 3 through 12. So we recently purchased new devices for our pre-K through 4th grade. This purchase will help to fully support remote learning, allowing all students to have a device. So please understand that all districts in every state are purchasing devices, which has caused a back order. Therefore, our new devices will not be in the hands of students during the first days of school. Those devices are expected to arrive in September. However, we are able to accommodate one-to-one in grades 2 through 12. On the screen, you would see a list of devices per grade level. If you look at pre-K through first, we chose devices, Lenovo 10E, that are touchscreen devices, and we feel that that was appropriate for that age group. If you look at the second grade, these are Lenovo 300Es, and these are touchscreen Chromebooks, and they also have a keyboard to help them to transition to third grade and those devices that they will be using for third grade on up to 12th grade. So if you look further, you have third, fourth, fifth, sixth, all the way up to 12th grade, and these are all Chromebooks. And with our early college and city, they use a special Dell laptop because of the applications, the Windows-based applications that are required. We can have the next slide. All right. So, as you see, that we have developed a help desk where teachers, students, and families can get technical support. Technical support can be reached in a number of ways. You can contact us by phone, or you can simply just complete a support ticket, and this information can be found on our district web pages. Just simply go to our district web page and under services and then click technology. You will find the information on how to contact tech support. The next topic is hotspots. It is our intent to provide internet access to all students who need hotspots. Just note that we have a limited amount of hotspots, and those students without any internet access will be issued a hotspot first. We have partnered with Sprint 1 Million, who provides us with free hotspots. We also partnering with T-Mobile and other community partners to secure more hotspots. If students are in need of hotspots, just make sure the parent or student goes to our website and complete a hotspot request, and that's also located on the technology section on the school's website. A lot of questions about technology fees. Our technology fees are still $20 per year, and this is for our middle and high school students only. Elementary students are not included this year, just our middle and high.
Good morning. I am Chad Thompson, Executive Director of Secondary Schools, and joining me today are Melissa Dancy-Smith, the Executive Director of Elementary Education, and Christy Grant, Director of Exceptional Children. We will present information on student learning. On Wednesday, July the 29th, 2020, Nash Board of Education voted to reopen schools with an all students beginning in online instruction. On August the 6th, Early College and City High started online instruction. All other schools will begin online instruction on August the 17th. In order to ensure our students, parents, and guardians are fully aware of processes, procedures, and general information for online learning, each school has developed orientations and open houses. Orientations and open houses will consist of in-person and virtual meetings. This will be at the parent's preference. Also familiarizing students with parents with digital tools and learning expectations. Meeting your teachers and the distribution of supplies, assessments, and so on. I would like now to turn it over to Melissa Dancy-Smith to talk through remote learning, how it looked before.
Good morning. This slide is a comparison of where we were in March and our confidence level in supporting our students next Monday, August 17th. The commitment that this district has made to principals, families, and students is that we will no longer be reactive, but rather proactive. In the spirit of being transparent, from March to May of 2020, Nash County Public Schools, like many other districts, responded to COVID-19 with a reactive posture. So in the spring, if you look at the left column, we would have to admit that we were reactive. We were inconsistent in the number of hours that teachers were available to families. There was a focus on review of concepts, and maybe some new concepts were taught. There was a variety of digital tools. There were flexible daily requirements. In elementary schools, there was no grading. Attendance did not count, but we strongly encouraged participation. Reactive support for students' internet access. Well, when school opens next Monday, we have been proactive in planning a robust learning experience for our students. We will have up to 4 hours of live instruction. And to be clear, we have looked at the different age levels and what is required and what is recommended developmentally. So 4 hours would be secondary and not our elementary students. We will have direct, explicit instruction with lessons recorded for students to access later. We will be teaching new content standards with ongoing review and feedback for our students. We have streamlined our digital tools for families. There will be daily, consistent school with teacher office hours to support small group learning, graded assignments each week with feedback. Attendance will be taken daily, and we'll talk to you about how principals and teachers will ensure that attendance is recorded. And there will be planned support with Wi-Fi access locations and hotspots. So what are some other ways that student learning will look different? Accountability, attendance. Attendance will be recorded in Power School, and we have also established two-way communication processes for our teachers and families. During parent orientation, schools will share more information with you about attendance, how it will be documented, expectations, and the forms of two-way communication that have been established. Assignments will be graded and ongoing feedback will be provided. There will be consistent in-person instruction per grade span. In elementary schools, there will be a minimum of 90 to 2 hours. Again, that depends on a child's developmental level. K2 will more than likely be 90 minutes, and as you move up to 3-5, it will be a maximum of 120 minutes. That excludes specials, any enrichment, learning extensions that students may need, as well as any interventions. And as I mentioned earlier, in middle schools and high schools, that's where you would go up to 4 hours. Curriculum resources, again, consistent learning management systems. Google Classroom and Seesaw will be used in elementary schools. Canvas is the only platform that will be used in secondary schools, and these same platforms will be available to our specialized classrooms, dual language as well. We have designed professional development for all of our staff, training sessions for parents. Mr. Thompson talked about orientations that have been intentional in ensuring that parents can access the platforms. And we have built in social and emotional lessons for all of our students, K-12, because we understand the importance of wraparound services and developing the whole child.
So next, we would like to show the comparisons between online learning and virtual academy. So remember, all students will start off in online learning on August the 17th and August the 6th for early college and city high. These models will look very similar. There will be robust learning, asynchronous and synchronous learning, as well as utilizing the LMS Canvas. So both online and virtual academy look very similar. Now I would like to move a little further into virtual academy. So virtual academy will be once again a robust lessons and presentations. If you applied to the virtual academy, and we are extending the date to August the 11th, by the end of the day on August 11th, beginning September the 21st through the 25th, your school will determine if you would like to continue in the virtual academy. So once again, if you sign up for the virtual academy at this point, you are not locked into the virtual academy until the week of September the 21st through the 25th. So it is our recommendation, if you feel like your child would continue in an online situation, that you apply to the virtual academy. Because at this point, you are not locked into the virtual academy. But once again, on September the 21st through the 25th, your school will contact you to determine if you would like to continue with the virtual academy, as your preference for your child remaining in full online instruction. If you choose during that week that your student will remain in the virtual academy, then your student will remain there until December the 23rd, 2020, which is the end of the semester, or for the remainder of the school year.
Parents cry to understand the difference between the online learning remote Plan C and the Nash County Public Schools Virtual Academy. Really, we've heard you very loudly and clearly. And to respond to some of the questions that we've received, we have tried to create a picture of the difference between both the remote C as well as the virtual academy. You'll see in the orange light color, all of those things highlight the online learning Plan C for pre-K through 12 students. Under that model, the model will provide an opportunity to move back to in-person instruction when practical. Students will participate in learning activities with a certified teacher in person. Students will have anytime access to learning activities and can engage during a time that works for them, and graded work activities will be provided during the week. If you move to the right and you look at what's written in blue, that would describe the Nash County Public Schools Virtual Academy, which is for students in grades kindergarten through 12. In this model, there's consistent, continuous online learning for students. So in short, students will continue this model during the fall or during the fall and spring if families don't feel comfortable returning to brick and mortar. So far, the only difference between the two is in the virtual academy, families just don't feel comfortable returning to the building. In both models, a student in virtual learning, in both models, students will participate in learning activities with a certified teacher in person. Students have anytime access to learning activities that they can engage in during a time that works best for them. Graded work activities will be provided during the week. Mr. Thompson shared that in the Nash County Public Schools Virtual Academy, a student must remain for the semester or until courses are complete. So the only two differences so far is that in virtual, families don't feel comfortable returning to buildings, and you make a commitment to remain in virtual at least for the fall semester. In both models, the following are the same. Standards-based instruction will occur. There will be live instruction. Students work at their own pace. There will be rigor and the same digital platforms. We'll use the same curriculum. Attendance will be recorded. There will be grading, and state assessments are required as consistent with Nash County Public Schools School Board policy. The next slide will highlight for you what a typical day could look like for a student in online learning, and that is in the virtual academy or in Plan C. Juan is a regular education third grade student. in all schools, the district has set parameters around what a typical instructional day would look like, just as we do when students are in brick and mortar. Some families have requested schedules from the time a child gets up until the learning ends. However, we recognize that for some parents, this is overwhelming, and they would just like to submit assignments and understand what those submission dates are. Well, you'll see in this graphic, Juan logs on each day at 9:15 for in-person learning, and that is when his day officially begins as a third grade student. And it ends about 2:45 with breaks throughout the day. Although we believe that students tend to thrive in a more predictable, structured learning environment, principals and the district understand the need to provide an equitable learning experience for all learners. So what does this mean? That principals will work with families to support a child's learning environment, for we understand that every child's day may not be able to look like our little Juan, who is a regular ed third grade student. However, what will be consistent would be expectations of rigor and exposing students to content-rich curriculums.
Okay, in addition to everything you have heard this morning about Plan C and our online services, EC teachers and service providers will provide instruction, support, and services virtually as outlined in our students' Individualized Education Plan, or IEPs, to the greatest extent possible. Service delivery and related services could be provided in a variety of ways, including telephone calls, instructional support materials, internet-based virtual lessons, as well as virtual therapies. So as we move to how will my child's IEP, what will it look like being delivered in a virtual setting? We have students that are served in various ways. So if we think about our students first who are in regular settings, those who are in special and regular education classes, a majority of the school day, they'll follow the same schedule as their non-disabled peers while also engaging in services identified in the IEP. Oftentimes, the EC teacher and general ed teacher will co-teach in classrooms and incorporate components of the Individualized Education Plan for each student. Students who are in a resource setting are removed from the general ed classroom with a special ed teacher, are provided targeted individualized education support during scheduled interventions individually or in small group lessons. They will receive direct instruction and could be in a reading or a math group working through programmatic curriculum. Students in separate settings, mostly our students who are accessing the extended content standards, will receive instruction in both large group and small group, as well as individually, instruction virtually to address IEP goals and the extended content standards curriculum. Direct instruction may be supplemented with activities which can be completed by the student. Some students may need support of a parent or a caregiver to participate in online instructional activities, and teachers and therapists will have specific office hours to connect with parents. For students also receiving related services or speech language services, the services and therapies will be delivered through an online format, either in small group or one-on-one, as appropriate for the student's needs. All students in Virtual Academy will have their IEPs reviewed, and a meeting will be held as needed in order to ensure that the program is individualized for each student. Any part of the IEP that cannot be delivered in a virtual setting will have an IEP team meeting, and the team will determine with the parent the best way to meet the student's needs in the online instruction.
Good morning. I am Leon Desfair Jr. I'm the Assistant Superintendent of Student Placements and Intervention. And I'm here this morning to speak briefly with you about school safety. When we are at a position where we will return to school, our students, along with our staff members, we want to make sure that we're taking all the precautions necessary to make it safe for everyone involved. So one of the things that we are mandated to do is to have daily temperature checks using non-contact thermometers. There are also 3 questions that every student, every staff member who's attending school will be asked. If the individual fails the temperature check, which is considered 100.4 or higher, or they answer yes to any of the screening questions, then that person, student, or staff member is considered to have failed the screening. And then there are processes that we have in place. So I want to talk a little more about the screening for students, and that will start when students get on the bus. So at the bus stop, it's critically important that if a child is kindergarten through 5th grade, that parents are at the bus stop with that child in the morning. Students, there will be a monitor and the bus driver. The monitor on the bus will step off the bus to ensure that the student does not have a temperature of 100.4 or higher. And again, that will be done through using a non-contact thermometer. The students will also be asked a series of those 3 questions. For our K2 students who may not be able to answer those questions, we are asking that parents complete an attestation form each day, and the schools will work with those family members to make sure that they have that form and understand what to do with that form. But those are the 3 questions on that form, and the parent will attest that the student has not either been in contact with someone who has COVID, have COVID, or have those symptoms. Once the student passed the screening and is allowed on the bus, they must have a face mask. We are working with transportation to ensure that we have some face mask on the bus in the event a student forget their face mask. But we are asking parents to make sure that when the student comes to the bus stop, that they have their face mask as well. On the bus, students will be separated so that they are at least 6 feet apart. Again, we want to make sure that we are ensuring social distancing even on the bus. And it is critically important that at the end of the day, when students are returning back home from school, and talking about our elementary students, K through 5, that parents are there to receive those students as well. So students who are riding the bus who have already been screened at the bus stop will also be screened once they arrive at school. They will have to go back through that series of questions. They would have to have their temperature taken again. And remembering if the temperature is 100.4 or higher, then that means that there's a failed screening. In the event of a failed screening, students will be escorted to a waiting room or isolation room where school nurse or other trained staff members will be there to ask some further questions, make contact with parents so that the student can be picked up from school. Parents who are bringing students to school, please understand that those students will be screened in the car. Parents will not be allowed to leave until it is determined whether or not the student has passed the screening. In the event that a student is being screened and they fail the temperature check, schools will have a place for parents to go and park and wait approximately 5 to 10 minutes, and then the student temperature will be taken again. If the student still fails the temperature check at that time, it will be considered a failed screening, and the parent will have to take the student with them. Students who are driving to school, Those individuals will be screened once they enter the school's campus at the screening point designated by the school. Again, if those individuals fail the screening test, those who are driving will not be allowed in the school. They will be returned to their car, and their parents will be contacted. We have some schools where students do walk to school. In the event that a student is walking to school and they are screened and they fail the screening process, those students will be escorted to the isolation room. Their parents will be contacted to pick the student up. All students and staff must wear face masks or face coverings unless there's a medically documented reason as to why they cannot. It is critically important that you understand that it has to be medically documented that the student cannot wear a face mask. And this is for all of our students and all our staff members, from the time they enter one of our buses to the time they enter campus will have to wear a face mask. We're encouraging students to bring their own water bottles. We are not allowing our water fountains to be used because water fountains can be a transmission of COVID-19. We certainly don't want students putting their mouths on it and then other students going behind them. So we believe that the best way to keep that from even being a part of possibly transmitting COVID-19 is to not allow students to use them and encourage students to bring water bottles. In the event that students cannot bring water bottles and they need water, Angie Miller, who's our director of child nutrition, will work with the child nutrition departments of each school to ensure that there's a process in place where students are allowed to get water as needed. School-based mental health. All of our schools who are participating in those school-based mental health programs will still be available. It will look different. Those of you who have already been participating, you're familiar with the teletherapy that has been going on since March and over the course of the summer, which will still be in place for our students and those families. Social and emotional learning and mental health for our students. It is critical for us to prioritize addressing social, emotional, and mental health needs in order to help students to be ready for learning. Social and emotional learning is the process through which children and adults understand and manage emotions, set and achieve positive goals, and how they show empathy for others, establishing and maintaining positive relationships and making responsible decisions. The last few months have been extremely stressful for both employees and students, and stress of this nature and that will affect people differently. The levels of fear and anxiety that different individuals may show in these stressful situations is totally dependent on who the individual is, because we all handle stress differently. Members of our student support services team, including counselors, social workers, psychologists, and nurses, will provide mental and emotional well-being resources for our students and families. Additionally, mental health resources have been organized and placed on the district's website. Triage is critical in order to identify individuals needing additional support beyond the classroom. This process becomes more urgent when students are at home during a remote learning situation and may be living in an environment that is conducive for trauma experiences. So one of the things that we want to make sure that we are doing is working with our staff to be aware of signs and symptoms that students may be experiencing some sort of trauma, so that we can intervene and help children and families as quickly as possible. Schools are required to provide mental health and wellness resources to students, families, and staff. There's a comprehensive plan that we have shared with schools, and schools are ready to use. Some of the social emotional learning mental health strategies that we have in place are that schools will implement a district-wide program to support the social and emotional needs of students. Social emotional lessons will be made for virtual use for K-12 and will focus on the 5 competencies of self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. All teachers will make virtual contact with students and family prior to the start of school to make introductions and to look for any existing concerns. This can be accomplished through an email, website, dossier, etc. And parents, certainly, if there's some concerns that you have, you may reach out to the school and speak with someone there. Teachers in K-12 will utilize virtual daily check-ins, morning meetings, circle times to build relationships, review expectations, and review the daily schedule and monitor student functioning. All staff will utilize the social emotional basic needs inventory to identify students with concerns. Again, the staff at the schools, this information will be shared with them through the student support services programs who will be able to help teachers and families walk through this process.
Okay, so that concludes our presentation for you this morning. As you can see, and as Dr. Ellis mentioned, our planning has extended to include all possible reopening scenarios, from remote learning, which is what we're currently in, to extensive plans for what will school look like when we, or if we get to the point where we can phase students into the building face-to-face. And so a lot of thought and a lot of planning has gone into our reopening plan beyond just Plan C or remote learning. Our goal in sharing all of this information with you today is to help you make an informed decision and informed decisions as we move forward into the school year. So we're going to move on to the question and answer portion of our program today, and we're going to start with 5 pre-submitted questions that we've selected that we hope will get us off to a good start for the question and answer session. And then we'll move to the live chat and ask some of the questions that are in the live chat. Please keep in mind that we're probably not going to have time to get to all of those questions in the live chat, but we do commit to taking those that we are not able to get to, or even some of those that we are able to get to but we think are really important for families to keep in mind, and we will answer those questions in question and answer section of our district website. So to get us started, we had a question submitted by Selma Wilkins. And this question is, what accommodations are in place for working parents who work in the morning under Plan C and in Virtual Academy?
I'll take that question. As shared in the presentation, we have given principals guidance regarding what a typical day should look like in Virtual Academy as well as remote learning. We understand that parents have responsibilities like going to work, so principals will work with families as needed, but the expectation will certainly be that the child has some time to work on print material during that time if they cannot access the digital resources.
Thank you. Second question. This one was submitted by Donovan Chavis, Board of Education member. Are parents going to receive any type of confirmation of their acceptance in Nash County Public School Virtual Academy?
So the answer to this question is yes. Starting on August the 17th, we will have mailings, both physical mailings and by email, of everyone accepted in the Virtual Academy. If you apply, you will be accepted into the Nash County Virtual Academy.
Thank you. A third question that was pre-submitted by Carrie Barnes. If we elect not to enroll in the Nash County Public School Virtual Academy? And I think this question was actually also just repeated in the live chat. So if we elect not to enroll and are not comfortable with sending our child back to the classroom when schools open back up, will we have the option to remain in remote learning even though we didn't enroll in Virtual Academy?
So what we're asking is that you apply for the Virtual Academy even if you think you may want your child to remain in online learning. Remember, we said in the presentation that this does not lock you into the Virtual Academy, but what this does is give our principals an opportunity to see which students they would have that would continue on to online, possibly continue for online learning once we move to the buildings. So once again, those dates, we've extended the Virtual Academy application until tomorrow night. So please, if you think that you may want to stay on online learning, please apply for the Virtual Academy, because at that point, we will make contact, your school will make contact with you in September 21st through the 25th, to ensure that you still want to continue in the Virtual Academy, or you may have the opportunity to go to the blended learning at that time.
Okay, thank you. And a final question that was pre-submitted, again, this one by Donovan Chavis, Board of Education member. Will food services continue for students, breakfast and lunch, as before?
Yes, ma'am. We will be having food services continue. We have 6 schools open right now. That's Bailey, Fairview, Nash Central Middle, Red Oak Middle, Spring Hope, and Winstead Avenue. And we will continue that starting August 17th. And there will be many more schools that will be updated. They will be updated on the school website.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to work on that, Mike. It does look like some people couldn't hear that very well, and we will circle back to Ms. Miller's response in just a moment. Going to our chat questions, we have one. If that was a Virtual Academy one, that was another Virtual Academy one. There are some other courses that require office programs in middle school. I believe they're referring to CTE. How will these courses handle that?
So at this point, we're working with a program to try to increase the amount of program software for our students. So we are on a plan for that at this point to ensure that our students have whatever. We will make sure those resources are there for whichever course they take, whether it's CTE or General Ed.
Thank you. We'll go back to Ms. Miller. I think we got her microphone fixed. And will food service continue for students as before?
Yes, it will continue. At this time, we have 6 schools open: Bailey, Fairview, Nash Central Middle, Red Oak, Spring Hope, and Winstead Avenue. They will remain open until August 14th. Starting August 17th, we have many more that will be open. We're updating those on each of the individual school sites and posting those online, but they will run from 11 to 12:30 or 1 o'clock at various sites, some of which they're all drive-through service, and you will see either a bus there or the cafeteria area open. And those will be posted on the website for those individual added schools on the 17th.
Thank you. We have a question submitted by Lakeisha Richardson. Can you give us a little insight on flexibility for teachers with children and how they will be allowed to work, or whether they will be allowed to work from home to oversee their children's online learning, etc.?
I'll take that one. So right now, we are going to be allowing teachers to bring their children to schools. They'll be handling that in their classrooms. Also, we're having some contacts with the Boys and Girls Club and the YMCA to develop some more daycare options for teachers.
A question from Vernetta Taylor. Will the time frame be adjusted for students to drop off, for student drop off in the morning, since screenings will have to take place?
Each individual school will work if they decide to have a staggered process of when students are arriving along with buses. Some of this we're going to have to build as we go along the way. I hate to say that, and I know people don't want to hear that, but some of it we just don't know how it's going to work out until we actually have students coming on campus. But we do anticipate that there will be some sort of staggered process, as well as several different screening points to ensure that we're trying to accommodate bus riders, people who are being dropped off by their parents, and students who may be walking or driving to school.
Another question related to car riders or drivers. What about older students who drive siblings or friends to school? If one of their passengers fail the health screening, what will happen?
Then that student would have to go to the holding room. The parent would be contacted, and the parent would have to come pick that child up.
A question from Amanda Prince. Will the online lessons be streamlined, as in the sense we can go to one website and have all of the lessons be in that one screen, or will we have to open multiple web browsers?
So we have the learning management systems inside of our secondary will operate in Canvas. So those videos will be placed there from each teacher. And then in elementary, they have Seesaw and Google Classroom, which will also act as their learning management system.
Okay, we have one from another from Sharonette Grooms. Also, my son's school will not hold open house or orientation until the week of the 17th through the 21st for kindergarten. When do his classes start for her child, and what can she expect that first week of school?
Online instruction begins for all students August 17th. It has always been the practice of Nash Rocky Mountain Schools that we pay special attention to our students in kindergarten, because this is their first formal introduction to a school setting. So we are still using the staggered entry for our kindergarten students. So that is why their open houses are scheduled for next week.
And Ms. Dancy Smith, there's another elementary question. Is Virtual Academy available for pre-K students?
We will offer virtual learning for our preschool students, but they will not enroll in the Virtual Academy. We received actually further guidance from the state last week. We need to unpack that a little more. So in short, parents will have the option to opt into online instruction, but it will not be a part of the Nash County Public Schools Virtual Academy.
Another Virtual Academy question. I signed my daughter up. This is from Kathy Garner. I signed my daughter up for Virtual Academy due to health concerns, but now that we are in Plan C, will she have her teachers remotely, or will she be in Edmentum?
So the plan is in secondary and most of our grade levels is to begin with the teachers in online learning as they're scheduled, and continue with those teachers as we transfer into if you transfer into a virtual academy situation. So you will continue with those teachers. And I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Nancy Smith to explain a little bit about elementary, if she would like to.
Yes, in elementary, it will be very similar. However, we would have to look at the number of students who have signed up for Virtual Academy to ensure that the teachers will be assigned from the various schools. For an example, just last week, I worked with an elementary principal, and he has less than 20 students, K-5, who are interested in the Virtual Academy. So in his particular situation, we may have to pair his students with another school if those numbers do not increase. So it really depends on school to school and the number of children we have who have applied for Virtual Academy. We will make a very intentional effort to ensure that we match teachers with their teachers and students based on their base schools, but I wouldn't be honest if I say with 100% certainty that would be the case. It just depends on the number of students per school.
And that goes right along with a question submitted by Brittany Brown. If students do virtual this semester and then go back after Christmas, will they have the same teacher?
I'll start first. I think in most cases they will have the same teacher, but I think again it depends on the number of families who have applied per school. Our standard expectation is that we will work diligently to match students with teachers in their base schools.
Okay, a question by Jay. I'm not going to be able to say your last name. Poyasin, maybe? For live online classes, will students have to activate the cameras or will they just talk?
Usually online or on-board cameras will automatically talk. If they have a SACRT camera, then they would need to change it to the SACRT camera. But any students or anybody who's having issues with anything as such is to just call our help desk. We have a bunch of guys that be available to help you maneuver through any problems that you should have in regards to cameras.
And if I could follow up with that question as well, if a parent opts out of just a child showing his or herself on the camera, they reserve the right to do that, so they don't have to. It is probably most teachers' preference, but they aren't required to turn their cameras on if they don't feel comfortable doing that. And Mr. McQueen can help families in activating that feature on the computer.
Correct.
Thank you, Ms. Nancy Smith. I think you did, the gentleman clarified and asked whether it would be required, so I think you answered that. Thank you. A question submitted from Brittany Brown. When students go back, will they have recess specials? What will we do about specials in Virtual Academy? So I guess that's two questions. We'll start with when they go back face-to-face and then move to the virtual portion of it.
I can expand a little bit on that with the health and physical education piece. They will still have recess, but they will not use equipment. The equipment piece is not allowable at this point per the governor's standards. So even in the physical education class, they will not be using shared equipment. They will be using other alternatives for fitness levels, and with recess they can use many other options other than using equipment. Locker rooms and equipment are off limits in phase 2 of the state mandate.
And I'll jump in. Because the parent used the word specials, I can assume that's an elementary parent, and principals have built specials into the virtual schedule. When I showed Juan's schedule, you could see that the special areas were built in. However, some principals are opting to do more project-based learning, which means music, art, and PE may be integrated in math, science, and reading, social studies, but some teachers have carved out that time. The principals have carved out that time the same way they have if they were in brick and mortar. Of course, it will look different, but they've done a really great job of ensuring that they meet the needs of the whole child, looking at physical education as well as those artistic skills and bringing those out from some of our learners as well.
And a follow-up question to that for secondary, what about band and chorus?
So band and chorus will happen. There are some various stipulations, just like in PE and specials, with playing a certain instruments and so forth. And Miss Suzanne Weaver will be sure to put all of that information out, and all the band directors, to my knowledge right now, are reaching out to the students within their class and to give this information as well.
A question is from Phanesia Pittman. Is the Virtual Academy based on the previous Edmentum program, or is it different?
So the Virtual Academy now is different. It is not like our original Virtual Academy. This is based off of COVID-19 issues, and so what we have done is now revamp the Virtual Academy. This will be based off a teacher, a live teacher, or a teacher that has the student within their schedule in our district that they begin with at the beginning of the year.
And a question from Lakeisha Richardson. I know it's early, but are there any preliminary ideas or thoughts around graduation, senior prom, senior award ceremonies, assuming we remain 100% virtual for the year?
So right now there's no ideas in stone. We have actually thought about that, so we will be looking at that beforehand and talking to stakeholders as we get closer according to the restrictions. So we will definitely keep that on the radar as we move forward.
Running out of questions here. A question from Deborah Miller. How or will Virtual Academy affect AIG students?
We have created, as mandated by the state, a remote learning plan, and the AIG teachers have done a phenomenal job of ensuring that those services are still met as outlined in their DEPs. As I shared, using Juan's schedule, we've built time into our instructional day for interventions as well as enrichments. So those enrichments would pretty much be for our accelerated learners, including AIG. But I think one thing to consider is a lot of our AIG teachers co-teach, so they may be online with the teacher of record as they are facilitating that live instruction as well.
Thank you. A question from Deborah Jackson. How do substitute teachers fit into plans this year, especially during remote learning time?
Substitute teachers will go as usual as we have in the years past. It is up to each substitute teacher if they feel comfortable taking an assignment for that day. Mask and other equipment, hand sanitizer, hand washing stations will be provided for them. Social distance measures are in each school. So it is up to the sub if they wish to take a job for that day. And as of today, we do have enough subs that feel comfortable to go into the schools to sub when needed.
Thank you. Another question, Mr. McQueen, I think this one will be for you. Are sixth graders using the same type of laptop as third and fourth graders? And if so, why do they have to pay a technology fee?
Yeah, that is true. The sixth graders and the third and fourth graders have the same type of device. Our middle and our high school students are already used to paying the technology fees. And because this is new this year for our elementary level, we're not requiring them to pay a technology fee this year. We don't know what's going to happen from a year from now, so it may be different. But for now, just only our middle and our high school students are required to pay our technology fees.
Thank you. A question from Annie Richardson. How will the virtual academy affect children with an IEP?
Students with an IEP that are enrolled in Virtual Academy will still receive their services as outlined on their IEP. We will need to meet as an IEP team, though, to see exactly what that looks like. And if the IEP team feels like parts of the IEP will not be able to be delivered in the virtual setting, especially Virtual Academy, then we will develop an online remote learning plan so that we can see what is it that the child needs. There may be additional accommodations or modifications that are needed in order to assist the child. But we are going to make the best possible faith effort that we can in order to ensure that our students receive all their services.
Thank you. We had another, I'm going to paraphrase this one as a question. Can a parent opt not to get a device if they can't afford the fee?
If they can't afford the fee, we have a form on our technology website that speaks of the name escapes me right now, but
waiving.
Yes, the waiving the fee. Yeah, so there's a form on our technology site that they can fill out. So we will ask them some clarifying questions about some information just to prove that they need some help in that area. But as far as the devices being required, last year we had our middle and our high school, those devices were required. For our elementary schools right now, since we have limited devices until the new devices get here, what we're asking for is our parents to, if you have devices at home, you are not required to get a device from the school system. But if you have an adequate device at home, then we're encouraging our parents to have the students to use those devices at home. That way we can get those devices, those unused devices, to other students who need them until we get the new ones.
Thank you. Question from Sandra Radford. I have enrolled my child at the Y. They are planning student time there during the day. Will that count as their attendance check?
As long as the child submits his or her assignment and he or she meets the due date or deadline that has been set by the parent and by the school, then that will count for attendance. However, the district is working very closely with the Y to ensure that they are familiar with the schedule so they can support kids as much as possible while they're there.
And that includes joining any virtual meetings as well. We've had conversations with not just the Y, but other child care centers who were providing care to school-age children, and we'll be supporting them to make sure that they have all of the resources and the materials they need so that students can access learning as if they were at home. Okay. How many hours approximately will a kindergarten student have to be logged in through Virtual Academy?
In kindergarten, we are looking at approximately 90 minutes, but that would include live instruction as well as independent practice as well. Again, that does not include special areas, any interventions that the teacher feels that a student needs, or enrichment activities that a teacher feels that a student would need. But so around 90 minutes of online and offline instruction.
Thank you. A question for Mr. Farrow, I believe. How will issues of cyberbullying be handled if they arise?
If there are issues around cyberbullying or discipline at all, any concerns, the teacher would certainly address those with the principal, and then the principal would address those issues. We have a process in place at the district level that we use for bullying in the event of cyberbullying through a virtual setting. I'm certain that the principal would contact the parent, schedule some sort of either in-person or meeting over the phone to address the issues. If the behaviors were to continue, then we would have to look at putting other disciplinary measures in place.
Question from Tawana Joyner. Who is teaching Virtual Academy?
So right now, if we remember, every student is starting with online instruction. And so when we get to the point of moving to a blended model, at that point, the student would remain with their scheduled teacher as much as possible. So the teacher that they're scheduled with is the hopeful piece that we have as teaching those students in the Virtual Academy as well.
Thank you. Another question from Sharonette Grooms. Since devices will not be available until September for some students in kindergarten and first grade, how does remote learning work for those students?
Well, for those students, we have options. I can tell you about the device side. There are options if we don't provide them devices. There are options to for paper packets as well as we have an option for USBs. We also have an option of, I think that's it. Yeah. Okay. You can speak a little bit more about that. I can tell you about the devices.
And when you think about, we talked about, we have streamlined our digital tools. So all of our teachers will use Zoom. Families have the option to call in and use Zoom as well. So it doesn't, you don't have to have a device. It would be really nice if all of our students were starting off the school year with a device. But as Mr. McQueen shared, that every school district across the nation is purchasing devices for students. So they're in high demand. So we'll have packets. We'll still set up office hours. We'll use things like Class Dojo. We'll continue to use Seesaw for students who have access to devices at home, but whatever students have access to digitally, we'll make sure that families have print copies as well.
Thank you. We have a question from Amanda Prince. My son is entering third grade. This will be his first year taking end of grade tests. Has there been any consideration on how that might be handled if the entire year is remote learning?
Accountability is really in Robin Griffin's camp. She is our accountability director. So I will attempt to answer this question as intelligently as possible. As it stands right now, state testing has not been waived. For an example, in third grade, we administer the beginning of third grade reading assessment. That assessment is still on go right now until the state tells us otherwise. What we've done as a district in secondary as well as elementary schools, we have unpacked all of the standards that are required by the state. And because we're teaching remotely, we are focusing on those high priority, big rock standards to ensure that if we do take the assessments at the end of the school year, that our teachers will have those priority standards and that those standards will be taught. Robin Griffin just walked in. I don't know if she would like to answer that question about a student entering 3rd grade and taking those assessments.
Good morning. We are still getting guidance daily, almost hourly, from the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction. In fact, I just got off of a web meeting with them this morning. At this time, the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction and the legislature are saying that all assessments will be administered during the 2021 school year, but the details of that are still uncertain. So we are working closely with our regional accountability coordinators and the Department of Public Instruction to get the latest information that we can. So at this point, I agree with Ms. Nancy Smith that teachers' responsibilities will be to teach the content, and we'll leave the testing questions a little bit later until we get final guidance on that.
Actually, you can hand that to Ms. Privet. I think the next question's for her. What options are you giving to teachers who are not comfortable returning to school?
Currently, teachers have 3 options. Number 1, starting with the accommodation plan. To be eligible for an accommodation, employees have to be 65 years or older, be of any age and have an underlying health condition or care for someone with an underlying health condition. Option number 2, well, before I go to option number 2, under the accommodation plan, if you are eligible for that, the temporary accommodations are teleworking, additional or enhanced PPE equipment, social distance measures, modified job responsibilities, modified work schedule, alternate on-site work location. If an employee is not eligible for an accommodation plan, the second option is 2 federal leave options. And with the leave options, medical documentation is required. If an employee is not eligible for leave, then the last option is teleworking. We do have a telework agreement where you would need to speak with your principal to get their permission to telework. And going back up to the first option for an accommodation plan, if there is an underlying health condition, medical documentation must be provided. So there are currently 3 different options available. I advise that you start with the accommodation plan, then look at federal leave options, and lastly, telework agreement with your principal or supervisor. And the best way to differentiate between the 3 is to go on our HR website, and there's a form that will walk you through step by step which option is best for you in your situation.
Thank you. And I think we have time for one additional question. This one is from Felicia Renee. Will the Spanish immersion curriculum still be included if a student is in virtual academy?
Yes, students who are in our dual immersion program can still enroll in the virtual academy.
Okay, that was a short response. We have time for one more. And we have just one more that was added. Same person submitted. How involved are teachers in the decision process on when or if we bring students back to the school building?
So when we started this process, I believe we surveyed teachers twice to basically see where they stood. So I'm assuming when we start our second, when we start deciding if we're going to bring kids back in September 8th, we will make sure we ask teachers how are they feeling and are they comfortable about this process.
And we also, that one of the reasons we expanded our advisory councils beyond just parents is so that we could make sure that we engage a variety of stakeholders in the decision-making processes across the district. And so that teacher advisory panel will also serve as kind of a sounding board for any tentative plans that we move forward, along with our other advisory councils as well. So I think that concludes our question and answer sessions for today. We could go back to that last slide. I'm going to thank everyone for being with us today, coming back for a second chance. I think that it went well, and we plan to host these a second session tomorrow, as well as at least monthly throughout the year as we move through the school year and have various topics that we will bring before you. As I mentioned, any questions that remain in the chat or any questions that were asked multiple times and would be good just to have out as a question and answer section on our website will be posted on our district website, which is www.ncpschools.net. Also, our social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And hopefully you have started receiving messages from your principals about back to school messages and processes that they have in place. Dr. Ellis, I'll turn it over to you to close us out for the night, or the morning, I guess.
So I just want to thank everybody for participating today. It seems like the virtual academy question keeps coming up. I just want to ensure parents that the virtual academy option is not going to be a computer program that your child is going to be on. It's going to be a rigorous, with teachers, and it's going to be monitored. So I just want to make sure parents understand that. We were not going to be putting kids on just a program for virtual academy, and I just want to make sure I clarify that. When we move forward, they are going to be based on some scientific metrics that health department in Nash County and also the state are going to give us guidelines. I want to make sure parents understand that again. This is going to be a safe event if we do move into Plan B, so I just want to ensure that. If you have any questions, like Dr. Catalano said, that we have a website that you can go to, and also the schools are starting to put up their websites with orientation information, videos from teachers. You're going to get a lot of that basic information for your student at those school websites. And I just want to make sure, together we will make this a successful year. It is a different year, but we want to make sure that it's going to be successful for your child and for us, and we're going to move forward. So thank you again for participating. Have a great day.